Welcome to the Dogs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
What's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to the final, praise Jesus, final game reaction of the season. Never been so excited for a Browns season to be done, but here we are, and we can finally move into the off season where we don't have silly things like games to worry about. We can just talk about how this franchise is going to move forward. I put it out on X yesterday when the game clock hit triple zeros. I said, thank God that's over. Put this season in the trash and never think about it again. And that's kind of how it's done. And thank God. We're going to talk a little bit about yesterday's game, but there's not much to talk about. I mean, it was the Browns practice squad / the Saints practice squad. I mean,
Ravens.
I saw a guy running. Yeah, I saw a guy running the ball. I didn't even know who he was. I was like, where did you get this guy from? So just not a lot to talk about in the game. We'll touch on a couple things. I did think there was like a positive or two to take away. But then we're obviously going to just reflect on the season and kind of talk about what the Browns do going forward in the next couple weeks and months. Before we do, though, remember, if you want to get your thoughts and your intros on the show, head to thedogspodcast.com, tap leave voicemail. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Make sure you tap the notification bell so you don't miss any of the content that we're putting out, especially as we transition into off-season content. It's going to be a lot more exciting for us as Browns fans when we're talking about top 3 picks, free agents, all that good stuff. If you prefer to just listen to the show, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, and Google. And if you want to find us on any of the social media platforms, just search at The Dogs Podcast. You'll be able to find us. Lastly, if you're looking for more Dogs content, head to jointhedogs.com, become an official Dog Pack member on the Patreon page. You get access to the private Discord. You get to play fantasy football with us, which I won a championship. I don't know. Is this still cool? Do kids still raise the roof? But I do anyways. And
you can.
I pulled off a stunning upset in the championship to win our Dog Pack, one of our Dog Pack redraft leagues. I know Josh won at what? Did you win one or both?
2.
He won 2 redraft leagues, and then Kenny and Justin failed us. But
yes.
This is actually the first year Justin didn't win a redraft league. Justin's been a champion every year, so I'm excited to get my championship T-shirt and flaunt it on here. But the fantasy stuff's a ton of fun for everybody who does it. We had 5 leagues this year, 5 redrafts and 2 dynasty leagues. And we're looking to expand that even more. We're going to turn it into an empire. Maybe get 10 redraft leagues next year. So if you guys want to play fantasy, you want access to the private Discord and talk to everybody all year round, especially as we're in this draft season and free agency season. A lot of good people to bounce ideas off of and theories and rumors. So if you want Browns fans to talk to you all the time, you want to get to know Justin, Josh, myself, Kenny, Mac, even more, talk to us all the time, jointhedogs.com, become an official Dog Pack member. So I'm excited to have Kenny Mac with us today. Justin is dad for the afternoon while his wife's working. So we brought Kenny in from the Great White North. How's the weather up there, Kenny? Because we got some cold snow. You guys got snow yet?
Yeah, it's snow squalls all the time. And basically, I think it's -10 here right now with the wind chill. So it's cold. I got the fireplace on across from me, so I can go a little bit sleeveless here, like Blake was just before this. But it's cold enough. And, I'd like some warmth at some point, but not by this season.
-10 for all you silly Americans. That's Celsius, though, not Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
That always trips me up. So that's like what, 60 degrees Fahrenheit? No,
no, God, no. It's, I can't even remember at this point. It's just cold and stuff's gonna freeze, man.
Oh man. So just kind of obviously not a lot to touch. Yesterday's game was of so little importance in terms of what we were doing on the field. The biggest takeaway for me from the game was we secured a top 3 draft position. Probably not number 1, but, at least top 3. And my parlay is still alive because I took the Ravens -13.5. So those were the 2 good things that came out of the game, at least in terms of what was on the field. I guess if there was maybe a positive or 2 other takeaways from that game, from what I watched, it was, even though this team was the big, even Miles said this is more disappointing than the 0-16, 1-31 time frame, because of the expectations in the season we were coming off of. I don't think on the field, the guys ever quit. The defense, even down the stretch, the last month, this defense still came out and played tough. Our defense I was getting nervous about the Ravens covering 14 points because the Ravens were struggling to move the ball. Half their points at halftime were off a pick six off Bailey Zappi. Like, I never got the sense like that the guys were giving up. And we heard Miles and Joel talk about that a lot leading up to this game in the last couple of weeks about they don't think Coach Stefanski is the issue, and honestly but from some of the comments that I was from Joel Bitonio, it was almost like if there was anybody else than Coach Stefanski, it might have went way off the rails, at least in terms of locker room chemistry and what we saw on the field. I know for us as fans, it was off the rails, but at least inside that locker room, Coach Stefanski kept the guys together enough where they all still believe in his message and they were still going out there and putting forth effort trying to win games. Now, we didn't put any talent on the field by the end, so it made it almost impossible to win games. So that was, for me, that was a big positive takeaway. And then I thought Bailey Zappi proved that he could be your third string practice squad emergency quarterback next year, especially with the news of firing Ken Dorsey this morning, which is the big news that we're going to get into today. But if we're going to revert back to Kevin Stefanski offense, where he has control, maybe even calling plays again, I thought Bailey Zappi, he's the first guy to throw a touchdown pass in a month, I feel like. So
he was.
So I thought he proved that he could be you're not rolling into a season with Bailey Zappi as your backup. Don't get me wrong, but as your emergency practice squad quarterback, however that works, I thought he showed that he could be on this roster next year in terms of that.
Yeah, and like you said, December 8th, by the way, was the last time the Browns scored a passing touchdown. So it's been a month. I think that was against the Steelers in Pittsburgh when we last had Jameis Winston. But the other positive for me, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the way Bailey played, I don't even want to say decent, adequate enough for a practice squad showing, the fourth preseason game of the year, essentially. Jerry Jeudy with 6 catches, 63 yards. I believe now that put him at 90 receptions for the season. That broke, if I'm not mistaken, Ozzie Newsome's record of 89 for a single season. So Jerry Jeudy into the Cleveland Browns history books. I think he has somewhere, what did they say in the Discord? 1,229 receiving yards this season, his first ever 1,000-yard season. We already talked about that, but that puts him, I think they said going into today's games, number 3 in the NFL, which is pretty good considering he played the last handful of games with Bailey Zappi and DTR, and the passing game was pretty, in the first 7 with Deshaun. Yeah, so Jeudy to be able to do that and the bulk of it in a 7-game stretch, pretty impressive stuff for me. So that's good moving forward to know that, hey, we do have a guy at receiver who can kind of lead the way. And we saw things from Tillman before his concussion ended his season. We've seen things from Elijah Moore. I still don't know how I feel about Elijah Moore, but there were times when I see him on the field making plays and I think I wouldn't hate having him back on a cheap contract. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about those players?
Well, I think Elijah Moore has got sold out just by the offense at the end of the year. And there was times where he was open and they kind of just got sailed on a pass.
Yeah.
The interception was towards his way. And I think he runs crisp routes. I think PFF gets it right as far as like he is ready. He catches the catchable balls when they come his way. And it just bad luck, bad coordinators, bad everything for him in his first couple of years. So hopefully he can figure something out. But that being said, if you put all his measurables this year together, there's got to be guys better, and maybe you can get, for that. So I'm just not sure with him. He's just kind of in a meh part of his career, and maybe he'll find something, maybe he won't. But you might have to clean that, just some of those guys up that were, we thought were going to be good but aren't.
I think we might have done ourselves a favor in terms of we put in DTR. Like Elijah Moore was starting to play pretty well in that 7-game stretch with Jameis Winston. And then we switched to DTR and he falls off the map again. Yes. One game he had 1 catch for 0 yards. He put up a George Pickens stat line. And so I think based on what he's done with the Browns, he's not going to get big money anywhere. He's not, you know what I mean? No. I think if he wants to come back and play, depending on what we're going to do at the quarterback position, and we're going to go back to Kevin's offense, I think we could sign Elijah Moore back cheap. And based on what I saw out of him in that 7-game stretch with Jameis Winston, if he wants to come back and be our 3, I feel okay with that. I think Jerry Jeudy is your clear number 1. I feel really good about him going forward next year. And then, like Ashton says here in the chat, you got to add explosive wide receiver DK Metcalf if available, or Garrett Wilson. And if you can't make anything like that happen in free agency, then maybe if with our top 3 pick, you get that guy out of Arizona, or Travis Hunter. But I don't know. My problem with Travis Hunter is I don't know what he wants to do. And if he wants to play both ways, maybe he is good enough to do it. Everybody just automatically assumes he's not, but maybe he is good enough to play both ways. But I don't know if he is or not. You don't. And then 2, this was a good point I heard from somebody, is if you bring him in and he plays both ways and he's your best corner and your best receiver and he gets hurt, you're now out your best receiver and your best corner. It's like losing 2 players.
Yeah. One thing I was hearing about Travis Hunter was some speculation that he would come in primarily as a cornerback, and then there would be offensive packages with him included as a wide receiver, but he would not be a full-time receiver. That was just speculation, of course, nothing ironclad or anything. But, talking about, I think it's Teteroa McMillan, Tet out of Arizona, like you were talking about. He's obviously the top receiver in this draft. I don't think anybody disputes that. But if you put him in line with last year's prospects, I don't think he's anywhere close to the prospects of Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Odunze, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy. I think he would, if he was in last year's draft, he might be the 6th receiver off the board. So talking about him, we'll dive into prospect stuff, but him in a top 3 situation for me is, I think, a little high, but we'll see how things go.
Yeah, so I don't like the draft at all this year for the top 10. It's tough when everybody's so bad and it doesn't look like the talent's there yet. But again, it's one of those things, like you said, I got to do more research into it to see what happens, but I'm not impressed so far.
No, I think obviously your biggest needs for the Browns on the offensive side of the ball before is quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and a tackle. And honestly, and I think it can be I think they're all high need. So I think that maybe wide receiver would be the lowest one out of those, because running back, you got to have a running back, and we need a tackle because Jed's not going to be here. And obviously we need a quarterback, but just before we get too far off topic with what you were talking about, the other wide receivers, I feel good if Elijah Moore wants to come back and be a wide receiver 3 on a cheap deal, especially if we compare him with Jeudy and another explosive guy. I felt good about what Tillman did. The only thing that concerns me is the concussion lingering for so long. What's his health going to be like? I thought Michael Woods played well in stretches with Jameis Winston. It's tough that we have to evaluate all of our wide receivers based on this little 7-game stretch we were playing with Jameis. So the only time of the year where we got even something close to competent quarterback play. But I thought Michael Woods showed some stuff. A guy who I was disappointed with this year was Jamari Thrash. We kept pounding the drum saying, why can't we get this guy in the game? Let's get him some runs, see what we got it with him. We need an explosive wide receiver. And you saw them trying to sprinkle him in the last month of the season, and he'd line up wrong, not know what to do, drop the ball. I don't know, rough rookie season for Jamari Thrash. And obviously, based on just the offense in general, it's hard to truly evaluate him. I'm not saying I'm completely out on Jamari Thrash by any stretch, but just not if I don't want to bank on that, because I didn't see enough out of him, this year to make me think that's a guy we can depend on. He can obviously still develop more and stuff like that, but
Hey, how about that fumble on the goal line? Wasn't that more like Browns-ish stuff that you could imagine for this season? To fumble right, or I guess it wasn't a fumble, it wasn't a completed catch, but you think you have a touchdown. It was, I think they called it a touchdown, then it wasn't a touchdown. And that's about as, Browns as it could be, because the whole year with my chapter, we actually waited for 10 seconds before we saw a flag. Was it complete? Did they go through the motions before we'd even do any of our cheering or anything? It was just crazy.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. I know we just talked about receivers and stuff from yesterday and wrapping up the season. The Browns might need to be looking at interior defensive line as well, because Michael Carter Jr. carted off the field.
That was such a bummer.
Knee injury.
You mean Michael Hall? Who's Michael
What did
Carter?
I say? Michael
Jr.?
Carter? Mike Hall Jr., sorry. Cartered off. That's what it was. Cartered off the field. Knee injury. I did not see. I don't know if you guys saw it. Kenny said he hasn't yet. I haven't seen any official announcement about what happened to him. Knee injury. Guessing it's torn ACL. Who knows what else, if there's any other damage or anything. But last game of the season, likely out for, I guess aggressive would be half the season next year, but more conservative, probably the bulk of the season next year. And, we were talking before you got on the call earlier before the show, Blake, but the Browns just cannot do this defensive tackle thing in the draft. They draft these guys and they either don't pan out at all, or they start to come on at the end of the season, then they get hurt or they get arrested or something. And it's like, we just cannot get this position down.
So this is one of those things where I think there's a guy, if we're picking at 3, that everybody would say it's a home run pick in Mason Graham out of Michigan.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think you can have the season you just had on offense and spend your top 3 pick on a defensive lineman.
The problem is that's where
I don't think you can do that.
The higher end talent seems to be on the defensive side at the moment in these draft prospects. But I agree with you. We are terrible on offense. And I've got some numbers to run through here in a minute that, oh man, these are doozies. So we had historically not just one of the worst Browns offenses ever. It was historically one of the worst offenses in NFL history. So it's tough to go defensive line in that first round. It's tough to look at Miles and Joel, guys who are looking for a plan, and say, don't worry, in the draft, I know we couldn't score more than 6 points half the games, but don't worry, we're going to take an interior defensive lineman at number 3 to really help us score some more points this year. Like, that's not going to go over well. At least I wouldn't think so. The guy's talent warrants the pick. I don't know if that's a high enough need for the Browns. And obviously, sometimes you just draft best player available. But if we don't want this to be a 5-year rebuild, we got to hit on some offensive picks early. Like, we need running back real freaking bad. We need wide receiver. We need quarterback. Like, we need tackle. We need a lot of help on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is already the highest paid defense in the league, I'm pretty sure.
Hey, man, I want to get Genty, and I don't know what you do as far as being number 3. You want to get the best pick overall, but if Genty makes us look better, how far are you trading down for that? How many picks are you going to gain? And that's something I want to know. And it looks like offensive tackle is deep enough. So is there someone that we could get later in the rounds, or if we acquire another first or a couple seconds or whatever it is for that third?
It's tough to tell right now, especially because we don't even 100% know where we're going to be picking. And I think a lot of what we do in the draft hinges on what we do in free agency at the quarterback position. And I think what we do in free agency at the quarterback position I'm curious to see, are we going to hire an offensive coordinator based on a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins, and are we going to go with like a Stefanski style, like a Kubiak type, or if we feel the need to draft one of these, a Cam Ward or a Shador, are we going to go get a young offensive coordinator to build an offense around what they do? So I think the Browns have to get together and decide what the plan is and get all on the same page before it's tough to really tell what they're going to do in the draft.
This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. Browns fans, we talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after? Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter, and most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients, plus it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order, and that code can be used over and over, so you get 10% off every order you make using code DAWGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. dangercoffee.com, code DOGS.
Did you see the early candidates possible for the Browns for OC?
No, and we could talk about that. Obviously, we should probably just say it because we're just assuming everybody knows. But if you guys live under a rock as a Browns fan, we woke up this morning to great news. Ken Dorsey was let go, and so was Andy Dickerson, the offensive line coach. Here's the thing about Andy Dickerson is I read online last week that Vrabel's essentially been coaching the offensive line the last month or two. Like, what is it? I don't even know what the guy was doing then. If Vrabel's doing it, I don't know what Andy Dickerson's even been doing. So the offensive line fell off, and we talked a lot about the scheme and trying to get players to do stuff that they're not great at. But man, the drop off in offensive line play was not a great representation of good offensive line coaching. And then obviously Ken Dorsey being, I think even more so than anything that happened in Cleveland this year, the biggest indictment against Ken Dorsey is what's happening in Buffalo since he left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard. You can't argue for Ken Dorsey. And I saw some people there's some people who just hate Kevin.
Yeah.
And they're saying Kevin scapegoated Ken. He gave him the play calling after the starting quarterback got hurt. Ken Dorsey never got to call plays with the starting quarterback, yada, yada, yada. Ken Dorsey was so bad as an offensive coordinator in Buffalo that he had the world believing Josh Allen had regressed and that the Bills' Super Bowl window was closed. But when he got fired, there were people going, the Bills might be on their way down already. Josh Allen is regressing. And he let him go, and Josh Allen is now the favorite to win the MVP, and they are the 2 seed in the AFC in a legit Super Bowl contender. That's a bigger indictment against Ken Dorsey than even anything that happened this year in Cleveland.
Let me run through some of these numbers for you guys. Anybody out there who does what you just said, think that it was, Ken Dorsey's being scapegoated, this was Kevin's, offense or whatever. We all know Ken Dorsey was hired to come in and implement a new offense. We saw it. The Browns ran 727 pass plays this year to 391 run plays. It was a 65-35 split. Under Kevin, it was never more than like a 40 or 55-45 kind of split. This was drastic this year. Heavy pass, and that's what they told us they were going to do. And they did it. The offense, just 15.2 points per game, fewest in the NFL. Just 27 total touchdowns scored, fewest in the NFL. 300 yards per game, fifth fewest in the NFL, would be the fewest if not for the 7-game Winston run. Most penalties in the NFL, most pre-snap penalties in the NFL, 34 turnovers, most turnovers in the league, second year in a row. And the Browns, this isn't offense, but to kind of go with that, the Browns defense had the second fewest takeaways this season with just 12. Differential was negative 22, worst in the NFL. Yep. So those numbers right there tell you why we were lucky to be 3-14.
That's why we fired everybody last year. Like, it's so ridiculous. That's my takeaways from it. I mean, I got the same numbers: 15.2, 29.5, 66, and 23. That's basically the points we averaged, the third down efficiency, and the sacks we yielded, and the interceptions that we did. It's all worse than last year, and we're supposed to be better, and we're not, with the highest paid roster.
Here's what's sad about those offensive numbers, especially like yards, points, all that good stuff. They are severely inflated by the 7 games with Winston.
Yep.
So like we went from struggling to throw for 130, 150 yards to all of a sudden getting 300-yard passing games out of Winston for a bunch of games in a row. If you take away Jameis Winston's games, who knows how bad this offense would have been statistically and where we would have ranked historically. It would be off the charts bad. These numbers are grossly inflated by the 7-game stretch with Winston.
I said 27 total touchdowns. How many did Jameis throw? I think it was like 13 touchdowns. Without those, we could have easily been under 20 touchdowns total this season. And let me go on a little spiel here for everybody. So I've seen a lot of people online social media saying that this season felt just as bad, if not worse, than the 1-31 seasons. So I wanted to look at the numbers. This season, the Browns had 34 turnovers to just 12 takeaways, like I just said, a negative 22 turnover differential. In 2016, 2017, the 1-31 era, the Browns had 25 turnovers and 13 takeaways for a negative 12 differential in 2016. And then they had a whopping 41 turnovers in 2017 and just 13 takeaways for a negative 28 differential, which was easily the worst that year. The offense this season, like I said, 15.2 points per game, worst in the league. In 2016, it was 16.5, so better. 2017, it was 14.6, so a little worse. This season, the Browns scored a league low 27 touchdowns. In 2016, the offense scored 28, so more than this team. And in 2017, 27, the same amount as this team. Meanwhile, on the defensive side of the ball, the Browns gave up 28.3 points per game in 2016, which was the third most in the league, and they gave up 25.6 points per game in 2017, which was the second most. This season, 25.6 points per game allowed, fourth most in the league. So everything about this season, offense, defense, those kinds of numbers, what they're giving up, what they're averaging, it was very much on par with those 1-31 seasons, except for the money that the Browns spent on the roster, like Kenny alluded to. In 2016, the Browns spent 70% of the cap. In 2017, they spent just 62% of the cap. This season, the Browns spent 83.3% of the cap, which is a 33% increase in their cap allocation between 2017, the team that went 0-16, and this team that just won 3 more games than that team.
It's almost hard to wrap your brain around.
It's a lot of, yeah.
And Miles talked about it being more disappointing, and the expectations, like, it's just to come off the season we just had last year where we make the playoffs with 5 different starting quarterbacks, and we come into this season and it's not like we went, 9 wins. We didn't go 9-8 and just miss out and we just didn't quite live up to it, but we're right there. We fell off a cliff.
Dude, we did episodes before the season talking about what constitutes a successful season versus a failure in 2024. And we argued how many playoff games they had to win for this year to be a success. That looks like a joke now, but that's where we were with expectations.
Were you surprised that the only change is Dorsey and Dickerson? I know a lot of people were throwing out Bubba Ventrone's name and stuff like that. I think Bubba Ventrone's still highly looked upon inside the organization and even outside the organization.
I agree. And a lot of it too is you look at a guy like Deuce Staley, how do you evaluate him? Your offensive line was awful. You provided no pass game or any kind of semblance of structured offense for this guy to develop his quarterbacks. You can only do so many spirited practices, let's say, to get your guys ready. I would even say, a lot of people are calling for O'Shea, I meant to say, and I thought his receivers looked pretty much prepared except Thrash. And I don't know if you're Thrash, you're put in this position on this offense that seems like a lot of veterans weren't getting it at the time. So, how do you evaluate that guy? But I'm okay with O'Shea. And then our guy, the assistant offensive line coach, that guy looks shot out of a cannon every morning. So, I don't know if he can't fire you up, I don't know who can. And then Tommy Rees, I'm like, I guess Vrabel was helping him a lot, but at the end of the day, I don't know how you evaluate him other than he's going to throw his name in for offensive coordinators, what I hear.
I have zero interest at the moment. Maybe things will change as we get new information. But right now, I've said it before during the season, I really don't want anything to do with anybody who was brought in to design this offensive scheme this year. If you were involved this year, probably just need a whole new batch of folks in here. But
Bubba, that would be Kevin Stefanski.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm talking the guys who were hired last year to come in and do it. Kevin's been here for 5 years, but I think that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if Tommy Rees is to be considered for offensive coordinator, and if they truly are giving Kevin control back, tells me that he didn't have much to do with what was going on this year.
I don't believe he did. Yeah.
Do you guys feel good about? So obviously, it kind of seems like they're just going to hand it back to Kevin. Like, hey, it's your show now. We tried this. How do you feel about that moving forward? Because to me, it tells me they don't plan on building around Deshaun anymore. Like, this whole season was about making Deshaun work. That's why you went and hired all these new guys and why you brought in Ken Dorsey. If they're going to give Kevin his full control and he's going to run whatever offense he runs, maybe even he calls plays and he's going to bring an offensive coordinator that he wants, which, call me crazy, but if they fired Gerard Mayo in New England, I could see Alex Van Pelt back in this building, especially if Kevin didn't want to get rid of him.
He's on the list, just so you know.
Yeah, like I could see him being right back in the building. But I lost my train of thought because I started thinking about Alex Van Pelt randomly. But
let me just say,
do you feel good about Kevin being back in control?
I would say 100%, man, because I would be excited. I think we've touched on it numerous times through the season. You have this two high safety bubble shell defenses that are really stymieing the league, but that's plays to Kevin's strengths, correct? So we would need to draft a running back and just get him back to where it used to be. I'm just super perplexed that with all the analytics that they couldn't come to this conclusion and go this way and couldn't have circumvented this Dorsey hire. I thought that's what analytics was for. Like, I understand its stats and that kind of stuff, but for some reason, D. Podesta couldn't get there. We are back in the old school thought of throw it around the yard like Pat Mahomes was doing when he was winning his first championships. And I just don't get that. And that's another guy that still don't know why he's here.
Yeah, that's the next name I'm looking for.
I'll say this too is I like the season had gone off the rails. We weren't doing anything this year. I think firing them the day after your last game on Sunday. They didn't wait till Black Monday. It tells me they knew that it wasn't working, but they weren't going to fire him in season. I think teams that fire coaches in season, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good to your locker room. It doesn't look good outside the organization. Like, just you're in turmoil all the time. You're bailing on the season. Like, they knew these guys are gone as soon as the season's done. But we're here now. We're not gonna look like a dumpster fire, Yeah, we're going to keep it in house, and we will handle it at the end of the season.
I think bad teams that do that, the optics are bad. But I mean, if you're a good team and you want to compete and you have the pieces like the Bills last year, I didn't think it looked bad for them to fire Dorsey, especially when they made the turnaround. So it just kind of depends on your situation. But this season, I know I bitched all the time. They need to get rid of Dorsey. It was a lost season from about 4 weeks in. So honestly, really wouldn't have mattered. You're right. But if this is the plan to go back to Kevin, and until we get word of that, I'm not going to trust anything. They might hire a new OC and we're going to have all kinds of different conversations. But if the plan is Kevin and his offense and all that kind of stuff, I want them to let him just pick the quarterback. Like, I want him to have full control, no Depot, no Barry, no analytics. Kevin, who do you think can run your offense the best? We'll get a veteran guy in here. Maybe we'll get somebody in the second or third round of the draft to, groom underneath you with this veteran. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins, whoever it is, but let him pick it. Let him have full control and quit meddling with these football decisions, especially the dude from San Diego. I'm sick and tired of that.
We were texting about this in the one text thread we have from the Dog Pack. A lot of Browns fans, they crap on Kevin. They say scapegoats people, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying Kevin is perfect, but I'm saying since day one of taking this job, he has coached in complete chaos for 4 straight years now in terms of COVID, injuries to his quarterback, a suspended quarterback, more injuries to the suspended quarterback. Just, he's coached in complete chaos. And I don't even know how much control he's had over some of the decisions. And that's speculation. I don't know. But, what has he done? He's managed to take us to the playoffs twice. We've won a playoff game and he's won Coach of the Year twice. I'm not saying Coach of the Year makes him untouchable, but I'm saying not many other coaches coach in this kind of turbulence and chaos and make it through 4 years with anything to show for it, not alone 2-time Coach of the Year and 2 playoff appearances. You know what I mean? Imagine what this guy could do with just a tiny bit of stability at the quarterback position. Just a tiny bit.
No kidding. And let's not pretend like we're not talking about an organization here that track record is the owner deciding what quarterback to pick in the first round, or GMs texting coaches on the sideline telling them what players to put in. If you don't think that this organization has a track record of the front office and ownership meddling in football on-field decisions, then you guys haven't been following this team. It's what they do. And there's no reason to believe that's not happening with Kevin. Somebody was arguing with me on Facebook today that, Kevin is a bad coach because he did not bench Deshaun Watson when he was underperforming. I said, if you think that he even had the option to bench Deshaun Watson, then you're not following this team. That was not a choice. He was playing no matter what, except for unless there was an injury. It's the only way he's coming off the field this year.
No, yeah, this was Deshaun's year, and they didn't go and hire an all new coaching staff just to give the bench Deshaun after 2 weeks. You know what I mean? And even though we all wanted them to, this season was either going to be a great season with Deshaun or it was going to be this year. And it sucks for us, but it ended up being this season. And now hopefully we are done and we're washing our hands of it and we're moving on. When I think about this move now, and we have got rid of Ken Dorsey and it's going to be Kevin and with control, to me, I guess when this is all speculation, but I think it takes quarterback off the board for the Browns in the first round. I've been doing so many mocks, and to be honest, I'm just kind of messing around because I haven't even done that much research on people. I've just been kind of looking at people I know and position that I know we need and kind of doing them. And I've done some mocks where we're taking quarterback at number 3. And then I've done some mocks where we're taking a quarterback in the 4th. I don't think if Kevin's going to be the play caller and we're going to go back to Kevin's offense, I don't think we take a quarterback in the first round. I think it'll most likely be Kirk Cousins as long as he wants to come here. And I think AB and Kevin are good salesmen, and I think they will be able to get Kirk Cousins to want to come here. To me, an ideal quarterback room for the Browns next year could be something like Bailey Zappi as your practice squad. And it doesn't have to be Bailey. I've just thrown him out there because he's already on the team. And then Kirk Cousins as your starter. And then honestly, as my number 2 quarter, I would bring in like a Drew Lock, another guy who I think could play well in a Kevin Stefanski offense, who has a good arm. And I think he can play good football with a coach who can coach the I don't want to call it crazy, but the gunslinger out of him a little bit. And I think he could be like and he's younger. So I think he could be a good backup. And to me, that would be a decent quarterback room. And then that affords you the opportunity in the draft to go tackle, running back, wide receiver, in whichever order you think you can get the best player available at those positions. I think if we're going to go to Kevin's offense, quarterback in the first round is going to be off the board.
I think whatever they decide to do at quarterback, whether it's a top 3 pick or it's later in the draft, free agency, whatever, they got to have some high level processing abilities at the quarterback position, because we've seen, the Browns have kind of veered toward this athletic profile of quarterback, and that's great in the NFL and everything. But I think they're prioritizing that sort of archetype over the analytical quarterback mind, the processing ability, guys being able to come up. We talk about it all year. Deshaun Watson, DTR, these guys could not walk up and read the defense pre-snap. They had no idea what was going on in the defense. And then when they snapped the ball and things changed, they couldn't read that either. And we saw the chaos that, transpired after that. But I did want to mention real quick, I'm watching Red Zone. Browns are currently projected with the 3rd pick because they'll be the 3rd 3-14 team, but the Patriots are winning. They're beating the Bills right now, starting the second quarter. The Titans, I don't think the Titans have a shot in hell of beating the Texans today. So really, it's just we might be able to move up to 2 if the Patriots can pull off an upset over the Bills backups.
I'll say this. If quarterback is going to be off the board, I've been anti-trade back because I thought quarterback would be on the board. And I thought you would, if you wanted to be successful in the cap situation we're in, you need a rookie quarterback. But if we're not going to take quarterback and we can get Kirk Cousins on the cheap, and then, by the way, we restructured Deshaun, we can be kind of out of the contract situation after that. I think you can trade back and accumulate a bunch of draft capital and maybe even players. I'm not saying drop back to 15 or 20, but I think you could drop back into the closer to the 10 range and get a boatload of picks or players if you're not going to take a quarterback. I was under the impression, the way I felt was if you were going to take, say you were going to sit at 3 and take Cam Ward, then you needed to do everything in your power to build around Cam Ward, not just try to stick Cam Ward into your system. You know, like what we did with Deshaun was we took Deshaun and we stuck him into Kevin's system. And when we said, okay, this isn't what he excels at. Okay, well, then we'll just go get a system that fits to Deshaun. But then that also requires you to change 11 or 10 other pieces because the other 10 guys on that offense weren't put in position. They weren't there to run that style offense. They were there to run a more Kevin style offense. So it's much easier to me to go find the quarterback who fits the offense you want to do. If you go draft a Cam Ward, which I'm not anti if that's what they want to do, but if you're going to go draft Cam Ward, then you need to get an offensive coordinator that can build an offense around his strengths. You need to get some offensive linemen that can move and do what they want to do. You need to get receiver that can put, you got to change more if you're going to go that route. If you're just going to go with Kirk Cousins, and it's going to be plug and play, and you're going to go back to like what you were doing with Joe Flacco, this offense, I think, is already set up to then be successful next year.
This episode is brought to you by Beatdown Sports. Browns fans, Beatdown Sports is your one-stop shop for all your athletic gear. Beatdown started out perfecting and manufacturing the best balls in the business. Yeah, if that sounded dirty, that's more about your mind than my words. But hey, it's true. Baseballs, softballs, footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, soccer balls, you name it, and Beatdown has engineered the highest standard sports balls available. And now they offer more than just sports balls. If you got kids playing baseball or softball, Beatdown has batting gloves and bats to go along with both game balls and training balls. If you're into basketball, Beatdown makes basketball specifically for indoor or outdoor use. Heck, Beatdown even has all the equipment you need for pickleball, which is one sport that I hear everyone is playing and yet I still never have. And I need to fix that soon. But don't miss the backyard games section of Beatdown's website where you can order everything you need for this upcoming outdoor season. Pool balls, backyard volleyball nets, croquet, bocce, horseshoes, cornhole, and more. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order at Beatdown Sports, BADEN sports.com/dogs, DAWGS, and use promo code DOGS when you check out. That's 10% off all the top quality sporting gear you need this season. BeatdownSports.com/dogs. Let's talk about some of these more outlandish, very unlikely quarterback scenarios. I just want to get your guys' opinions and see if you've seen any of these being floated around there. But one was the Vikings sign Sam Darnold to a multi-year extension and trade J.J. McCarthy. Would you be interested in the Browns going and getting J.J. McCarthy? And the other one was something with the Patriots trading their picks so that they can somehow get Shador and Travis Hunter on the team, making Drake May available. I'm like, okay, these are wild scenarios, but hey, the NFL is a wild place sometimes.
I would take Drake May for sure in a heartbeat. I want nothing to do with JJ McCarthy. Maybe it's the Ohio State in me, but I watched Michigan coach around him in college. He was bad before they started cheating, and after they got caught cheating, he was terrible again. I think he went multiple games without throwing a touchdown pass in college after they got caught cheating. And I watched them against Penn State, like in a close, they wouldn't let him throw. They ran the ball 30 straight times against Penn State. If you're getting coached around in college, I don't need you in the NFL. I thought that was a total reach by the Vikings. The only reason I even thought there was a chance that he could be successful is because they got Addison, they got Justin Jefferson, they went and got Hawkinson, and I think Kevin O'Connell is very good. Do I think Kevin's good and could get something out of J.J. McCarthy? Yes, but I don't want to coach around our quarterback. Okay. I think Kevin could coach around JJ McCarthy and he could play well. I don't want that. Just because I'm not saying we need to go get a Josh Allen type to be good in Kevin's offense doesn't mean I don't want a guy. I don't want to have to coach around him. I want a guy who in the moment when we do need him to make the throw, he'll make the throw. I don't want to have to run the ball 31 straight times because we're afraid to let him throw in college. They were afraid to let him throw in college. See, I don't need him in the NFL.
I'm a little different. I'm a little more interested in JJ because I think there's probably a discount to be had considering he hasn't played yet and he's coming off knee injury. So if they were to move on, obviously we would not be using our top pick to try and go get him or anything like that. But I heard a lot of scouting analysts last year breaking down the quarterbacks, the prospects and everything. And some of them were pretty high on JJ McCarthy and his arm talent. So I don't know if the possibility came up and the Browns went for it. I'd be interested to see him in Kevin's offense, especially if he came in here to be behind Kirk Cousins for a little bit or something. But that's just me. I know you don't like him, but
no interest.
I'd probably take Fields over him.
It would take minimum first round pick to get JJ McCarthy. They just spent the 4th pick on him. They're not going to give him away for cheaper than that.
10th pick on him.
Okay, well, 10th. They're not going to give him away for. It's going to take a first round pick to get him,
and that's fine. If it takes a high first round pick, I'm not doing
available. But I mean, who knows? I'm not interested in either one of those scenarios. I don't think they're going to happen, so I'm not going to put a lot of stock into it. I'd rather. We were going back earlier. I like the Derek Carr situation. Maybe that's somebody like. Stefanski seems to do well with veterans, and I would rather go that route than draft guys unknowns in the first round. And it seems like this year, out of other years, that this is going to be a super reach year for quarterbacks because nobody kind of knows. There's not that, stud quarterback that's coming out that everybody's happy about. I'd rather take my chances with Justin Fields or Carr, like I said, or even Cousins. Like I like Blake's scenario. Like that's something that could work as long as it's similar to what we got with Flacco, a guy that can read the defense, that's hard, good play fakes to sell the play action, and we have a good running back to complement that.
I would not hate later in the draft, mid rounds or wherever they end up going as far as the projections, but like a Will Howard from Ohio State could be, worth a 4th round pick or something to see what he could develop into. Or I'm kind of starting to watch a little more Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Seems like could be a decent, quarterback prospect to pick up later, especially if you're going to let him sit for a year or so and learn the nuances of the NFL behind a veteran. You never know. He's definitely got the talent.
No, for sure. I just think the future is better than what it feels like. Like, I don't think this is going to take forever. I think we can be good again next year if we hit on the free agent quarterback market. Like, I think, and I do think that even if we don't get Cousins, I think like Kenny just said, Derek Carr, I think there's going to be some guys who can run a Kevin Stefanski offense. I think running back's a huge need. And that's like, if we end up at 2 and we can trade back to 10 and draft like a Genty and then take a tackle with our 35th pick, like all of a sudden now you got Judy, and you have our wide receiver core. When you got Genty at running back, you put Cousins in at quarterback. You got your highly graded left tackle you just drafted. Like all of a sudden, the offense looks pretty decent. It looks a lot like it did, in 2023.
Yeah, and
a lot of guys in the comments are saying Joe Milton. He's playing right now, so he's the guy that's
right.
I'm not interested. I don't know if he's there yet, but I mean, good on him if he wins today.
Yeah, that helps us out a lot. I do think that, if this is the move back to Kevin's offense, like we've been talking about, and we've said it over the last couple of years, like that is Kevin's offense designed to disguise the deficiencies of your quarterback, to take the pressure off of him, to make everything easier around him and let the other guys do their thing. So I think it does help the situation in a quicker turnaround to be competitive again next year. Because Kenny, like you said, we've had success with some of these veterans. I mean, even Jacoby Brissett, who is by no means an outstanding quarterback whatsoever, had a decent season here. We were competitive with Jacoby Brissett. And if he had finished out the year instead of moving to Watson, we could have won even more games over that back half. So I do think that there's something to be said for some of these veterans that, kind of get that tag from people of, oh, they're washed up or they're garbage or they can't do it anymore. Well, they may not be able to do it all on their own, but I think in a Kevin Stefanski system with the right pieces around them, could definitely get the job done.
Well, one thing that I really want to see too is like one of these veterans step up and be able to run a screen game and a bubble game and pass to the flats. Like, we are so bad at that. And those give you those like 5-6 yards. So you're in 2nd and 2, second and 4, 2nd and 6, like around there. And we just don't seem to get that. And I know we get the procedure penalties and that kind of stuff. And we'll have a guy maybe that lines guys up better, holds guys accountable better, so we can have that offensive great 1st and 2nd and 3rd downs. And we just don't have that right now.
Is there anybody, I guess, when we're talking about the offense, and we touched on it a little bit with Van Pelt and stuff, is there anybody on the offensive coordinator radar that you guys are interested in? I
have not really even looked yet. I was just hoping for Monday to get here so I could see Ken Dorsey was fired, and we got it a day early. I was so excited. I was like dancing around the house, skipping around. Wife's like, what's going on? I'm like, Ken Dorsey's fired. I'm so happy. Like, I know the Browns just got killed yesterday, but I'm in a good mood.
The guys that are out there right now that I'm reading are Alex Van Pelt, Clay Kubiak, Josh McNown, David Girardi, Thomas Brown. I think I missed one. Oh, Tommy Reese. So the guy that we already spoke about. I mean, out of all those guys, Gary Kubiak's son, Clay, would be great. He would share the most principle, philosophy, whatever you want to say, with Stefanski, and he could set something up really good. What he knows about coaching in the AFC North, I don't know. But he is the passing game specialist with the San Francisco 49ers right now. That is something that we are totally lacking. They do kind of the same thing where, dump it off to a Debo, dump it off to Kiddo, and then hit you for long passes. That'd be great to see, but we need bigger guys on our team.
My like pipe dream guys were guys like if the Dolphins fired Mike McDaniels, which I don't think was going to happen, or if the Colts fired Shane Steichen, which I don't think is going to happen. Another pipe dream of mine was great choices. The Giants were to fire Brian Daboll. I thought he would be a good guy to bring in. Especially if we were going to draft a rookie quarterback. Brian Daboll helped transform Josh Allen into what we see now. He got Daniel Jones paid, which is honestly a miracle in itself. That he got a good season out of whatever his name is. I already forgot it. Josh Daniels, right? I'm having a brain fart.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat.
What's the former quarterback in New York?
The former quarterback. Daniel Jones? Are you talking about?
Yeah, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones. He got him paid, which is a miracle. So those are pipe dream guys. And I think all those guys are going to be back coaching. But if one of them were to be fired, then if you're looking, I think anybody with Shanahan coaching tree, anybody from the McVay coaching tree, like those are guys that I would be interested in. And then Van Pelt. My only problem with going to Van Pelt is, and I know the offense was obviously better with Joe Flacco, but we all wanted a more modern offense, which is why we were like, I was okay with letting Van Pelt go because I was like, he's just doing the same stuff Kevin does. He's not bringing any new ideas to the table. And I never wanted Ken Dorsey. We kind of talked ourselves into being okay with Ken Dorsey, but we all wanted a more modern offense. We all wanted more motions, more read options, more of this stuff that you're seeing teams like the Commanders do. It just didn't work out with Ken Dorsey and a bad Deshaun Watson. So do I just want to completely revert back to a little bit of, we used to have Jake Burns come on here and he said like this offense is just not that modern at times. And we've seen it be explosive, but when you start playing like those really legit top tier defenses that you're going to play in the playoffs, it's like, okay, can this offense get it done? We need some wrinkles. We need some things that, can take advantage of mismatches and put guys on the defense in space and make them think and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if I want to go back to I don't want to just run back 2023 just because it was better than what 2024 was. Like, I still think there was room for improvement from 2023. If we just went too far into the abyss with Ken Dorsey, and it doesn't help. Like, could the offense have been better if Deshaun was better? Yes. Like, it still probably wouldn't have been great because, like I said, we've seen the Bills. The Bills offense wasn't that great with Ken Dorsey, and then it got better when he left. But they weren't on their way to having the historically worst season of all time You know what I mean? Because Josh Allen was good. So if Deshaun Watson was what we thought he was going to be, could the offense with Dorsey have been better? Yes. But I just don't want to go back. I don't want to go revert back and just redo what we have already done just because we are so sick about this season.
Hey, what's going on?
Well, I just need a guy to show up, have a good offensive, and match the offensive line coach accordingly. I don't need guys on different pages right off the bat. The other thing is just listening to NFL Network this morning, and they're talking about coaches and finding a new one. Need a guy that maximizes what we currently have. And I need them to be a leader. I need some buy-in from the players, somebody that, the guys will follow. And I just don't know, I don't know if you guys listened to Ken Dorsey and you heard his press conferences. I was like, who's going to follow this guy? So he's always kind of like, he just never was a consistent, powerful voice that I thought. Not like when Schwartz gets up there, he's kind of cool, laid back. He kind of, tells everybody a little joke, and then they all kind of laugh. And he's a real straight shooter. We need somebody like that can fire up the crew.
Yeah, and I do want to point out to your point earlier, Kenny, about the analytics. This team is so heavily analytical based, and they yet don't seem to do it very well, because we've talked about how the league over the last couple of years is implementing this too high safety look. They're taking away the deep shots. It's a lot more force you to play underneath and all that kind of stuff. So we're seeing offenses try to, okay, we're going to start implementing more of a run game. Blake, you've talked about the running back position coming back and being more important, and teams having multiple guys that could come in and be effective and things like that. And here we are, after we have all this information, we can see what the NFL is doing, what the trends are, what the good teams are putting out there. And the Browns are like, let's just go with the air it out down the field type of offense. Let's get Ken Dorsey.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are you trying to do that? If you're using these analytics and all this information, shouldn't you know that's not what you need to be doing at this moment in time? And I feel like we are always a little behind the eight ball. We don't adjust. We don't adapt to what the league is doing quick enough. And by the time we do, it's already gone, and they're on to something else.
I'll say this. It's hard to bash them they tried to build an offense around their $230 million quarterback. I mean, it's like, I don't blame them for trying. We all wanted them to do it. We all said that Kevin needs to take the reins off. They need to let Deshaun go play. We just didn't know that Deshaun was terrible at playing quarterback now.
Yeah, I think he's I don't think he's there anymore, man. Like, mentally, with the game, with everything that's been going on off the field, I think he's shot. I think he's cooked.
I think you just need to take the recipe of the AFC North and just have tough, badass guys and run the ball down somebody's throat and do the according play action to when it happens. And if you can beat people up and run the ball down their throat, that always wins you football games. Now, does it get you far in the playoffs? I mean, but when's the last time the AFC North won the Super Bowl, right? But I mean, that always wins you games. And you know what? Quite frankly, I just want to win games.
So, I did see what coming. I don't think Dorsey did a bad job. I thought he did decent. Look how good Jameis was at times without offense. If you don't think Ken Dorsey did a bad job, you should have been here at the beginning of the episode. This was a worse offense than a 1-31 offense. It was terrible. It was an absolutely awful job. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was terrible. And Ken Dorsey won't be an offensive coordinator anywhere next year.
That's what I was going to say.
Or arguably ever again. He'll go back to being maybe a passing game coordinator or working a quarterback coach or something like that. He's not going to be an offensive coordinator anymore.
No.
This was his last stop.
No, he's going back to be assistant quarterback coach at the University of Miami. Probably. He's ruined it for the NFL, I think. As far as, like you said, definitely not OC. Definitely not OC ever again.
I think he'll be able to stay in the NFL. He's been here for a long time, but you don't get to be the offensive coordinator for one of the worst offenses of all time and then get hired to be offensive coordinator again.
No,
at least not anytime soon.
He'll go back to quarterback coach. He's had a okay track record there. Some guys are great offensive coordinators and they should never be head coaches. He is just probably never should be an offensive coordinator, but he'll be an okay QB coach.
We never were good at being tough. Maybe we should move towards high offense, bring in a lot of offensive talent. I love offense. If we want to go running back, wide receiver, if we want to pick all offense this draft, I'm down for that, because I think the defense was good enough this year that with any kind of offense on the field, we would have been playing meaningful football down the stretch. We would have been making a playoff push. We would have been, playoff contenders. Maybe we get hot entering the playoffs, that kind of thing. We were a historically bad offense away from being a good football team. And you saw that even going down the last 4 to 6 weeks, teams didn't put us away until the second half, where the defense, it was just like, oh, we got 14 points. This game's over. And they'd get a second half touchdown to go up 21-6 or 21-0, and it would look like a blowout. But if you watch the game for the first 2.5 quarters, we were playing tough. We were hanging with them. But eventually at some point you have to move the ball. You can't be 22% on third down, and just keep putting your defense out there. So I saw a mock draft. It said I traded back for multiple picks, and it was this guy, and he took like 12 quarterbacks in this draft. And I was like, one of them's got to hit. One of them's got to hit. You know what I mean? Just, and you're not going to be anything until you have that position solidified. So if the Browns want to do something crazy, I'm all for bringing in a boatload of offensive talent. I'm not anti that at all.
Yeah. Hey, before we get out of here, I wanted to do this at the beginning of the show. Totally forgot. So we'll just kind of revert things here, but let's play this voicemail real quick. I think we've already answered all of his questions, but here we go. This is Josh.
Hey, Dogs Podcast. Josh Eaton here again from PDX. That's right, Portland, Oregon. I'm just going to start calling myself the social worker, Josh, so you guys know who I am.
I'm not hearing it, man.
You guys don't hear it?
All the time.
Okay, no. Well, forget it. Forget it then.
We're not really hurting. I mean, it was a shitty season, Aaron, but it's done.
Yeah.
Well, I'll listen to Aaron when you get past the Chiefs, bro. We haven't done anything in a while. I mean, it's good for you. Fun times, man, in Ravenland, but you just beat up on a third string Browns team, bud.
Well, and the reason they had to win yesterday is because the Browns beat them earlier in the year. So,
yeah,
talk your crap, but the reality is kind of tough on you guys, especially since I watched the first part of that game yesterday and thought, if this is how the Ravens are going to play offense, they're not getting past the Chiefs or the Bills.
And they're 500 against us the last 3 years. We split with them now. So YOLO. But no, we're going to wrap this thing up. I'm looking forward to getting into the offseason talk, seeing what the Browns do. I'm looking forward. I'm not going to say I'm rooting for guys to get fired on Monday, but I am looking forward to seeing everything that happens around the league, who's going to be available, start seeing some names that the Browns are going to be tossing around. I think we can start interviews after the divisional round in the playoffs. So I'm looking forward to just turning the page on this crap season and getting into next season already. Like I already forgot what happened this year. I'm never thinking about it again. It's done. It's over with. And I'm just going to move on with my life and talk about fun stuff. So we appreciate you guys being here. This was our fourth full season, correct? Or fifth?
Fifth.
This is our fifth full season of covering the Browns on this podcast. So to anybody who's been here with us for 5 years, who watched us talk about the new uniforms in the league in our very first episode ever, or if you just recently started listening and you've subscribed and you've been following along, we appreciate everybody who has supported the show to get us through 5 seasons. You stuck with us, even though at times like this year the Browns weren't worth paying attention to, and we still had guys here in the chat talking to us every single week, commenting and supporting the show. So we really, really appreciate everything you guys have done for us to get us through 5 seasons. And let's go into this offseason. Let's have a good time doing these mocks as we get closer to the draft. Let's have fun talking free agents. Let's turn the page on this season, head into the 2025-2026 season with a brighter outlook. And maybe we'll have a little bit more fun next year. It'll be fun reaction shows and less therapy sessions. But again, we appreciate you guys being here, supporting the show for 5 years now. And we're looking forward to year number 6. And we'll see you guys sometime next week. We don't have to do preview episodes and stuff like that anymore. So make sure you guys are following us on the socials at the Dogs Podcast to have an idea of when we're going to be dropping the next episode. But we'll be talking about off-season stuff. We'll cover the rest of the NFL, obviously, what's going on in the playoffs and all that good stuff. So again, we appreciate you guys being here, supporting the show for now 5 years. And we're looking forward to a 6th year. And we'll see you guys sometimes next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dogs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.